2, 1.
Welcome to the City Council meeting for Tuesday, March 15th, 2022. Ms. Hilbrick, if you would, please call roll.
Councilman De La Garza?
I am present.
Mayor Pro Tem Solis will not be in attendance tonight. Councilman Crocker?
Here.
Councilwoman Scott?
Here.
Councilman Young?
Here.
Councilman Lofgren?
Here.
And Mayor Bucknight.
Here. If y'all will please stand for the two pledges, followed by a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you. All right, we're going to jump right into announcements. Mr. Garza, you first.
Absolutely. Whoa. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just one quick announcement. We will be launching soon an official marketing campaign around the charter election that we have coming up on May 7th. We'll be putting out information on our website, social media. We will also be going around making presentations throughout the community. And so I encourage anybody who's interested in learning more information about our charter election and the different proposals, they can visit our website, which you can see up on the screen now. That website is victoriatx.gov/charter. And we will also be happy to come, as I said, make presentations in any community group that would be interested. And so we just encourage residents to become informed on the proposals, on the amendments for the city charter. And there'll be more information coming out soon. So thank you.
Great, thank you. I have one announcement. I wanted to remind y'all that I brought it up on Friday. The Fasades, oldest delicatessen in Texas, is having its celebration on Saturday, 11 to 9. So 11 a.m. to 9 p.m., celebrating 140 years. And I think Ms. Solis will be there in my absence to present them with a proclamation celebrating this fantastic 140 years as well. Okay, if there's no other announcements or reminders, any public or employee recognitions?
No employee recognitions today.
Okay, thanks. Items from council. Oh, I have one. We have Lenny here from the airport, Mr. Lorena. He's going to give us a brief 3 to 5 minute update on SkyWest.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, City Council members. Thank you for the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the airline service coming up, what's happening right now. And as you probably all read, the paper had an article about the airline filing a 90-day notice to terminate service, not only in Victoria, but 28 other communities around the country. And this was really, really bad news for us because we were very happy with the service. Things were going really good. Schedules changed lately, but things were starting to pick up with the schedule. People were getting used to flying the particular schedule that we have right now, and now we get this news. As part of the process, you know, an airline has to file this 90-day notice to terminate, but immediately the U.S. DOT filed a notice order in which prohibits SkyWest from leaving the 29 communities around the country that they filed a notice. So what's going to happen right now, to give you a condensed idea of the future, is that SkyWest can leave. They cannot leave the community as ordered by the U.S. DOT. And they will stay until the day we find another airline that is suitable, and it will allow us for an easy transition from one airline to the other one. The reason why the airline decided to quit at these 29 communities, as they say, is a shortage of pilots. There's not enough pilots in the industry right now, not enough in the pipeline, so all the airlines across the country and across the world pretty much are suffering of this shortage. SkyWest decided to jump real quickly cancel these 29 communities and utilize those pilots at other routes for United Airlines. So they, in essence, they think they're good, but I don't see any reason that they might be flying past the 90 days, possibly towards the end of the year, because I don't see any other airline at this time trying to bid. One important thing that we have here in the community is we did not at any point gave up the twin rights, which means we would always have a twin-engine aircraft flying in and out of Victoria. Some other communities, at some point or another one, they gave up their twin rights and they decided to go with a single-engine turboprop. Later, those communities might have gotten SkyWest, and they started flying twin engines again. But in this reshuffle, if there is a single-engine turboprop company that offers service in those communities, they are going to be mandated to take those. We didn't, so I think that will make it a little bit of a longer wait for our community to get an airline that is going to be suitable for the community with the twin engine. So at this point, I see SkyWest flying for a little bit of a time, possibly past the summer, possibly the end of the year, until we get another airline. In the meantime, we're preparing for it, and the DOT put also a notice to airlines to propose or bid for the 29 communities. It's due in April 11. So sometime mid-April, we will know if anybody actually bid for Victoria, and we go from there. Hopefully we get a good airline, something that is equally efficient like SkyWest. If not, we'll have a decision to make and to tell the DOT whether we accept any of the ones that came in in the bid or not. With that, I take any questions. I know it's a little complicated, but if you have any questions, please.
I have one. Would
Yeah.
you agree that it is important that citizens continue to use the airport and air service? Because it only makes us look that much more attractive should another airline start trying to bid on our routes?
Absolutely. It's very important that community continues to support the airport and the airline. Nothing has changed. The schedule is the same. The schedule, they usually put the schedule out for 60 days. The schedule for the month of May is out. Everything looks pretty similar to what we have today. And what the mayor said is very important that we continue to fly, we continue to book, as those employments will help us. The busier we look here as far as employments, it'd be more attractive for any airline out there to bid for this community. So we would like to see the community support and rally behind the airline.
Thank you. If y'all don't have any other questions, I appreciate you coming tonight and give us that
Thank you.
brief
No problem.
update. All right, no other items from council. We'll close items from council and get into citizens' communication. Mr. Vonderop.
Good evening, council. I was going to say Celeste, but she's not here. And I was going to say county clerk, you're not county secretary. One of the things that's causing homelessness is drug pushers. The drug pushers know they get those $850 checks, and that was really bad around the trailer park. I'll say alleged, because some of them ain't been convicted for drugs, but they are in jail for other offenses. And, it's just funny, after my neighbor goes to jail, everything's fine, and you have it's like a carnival that never ends. And they're not trying to help the homeless people. They want you hooked, because the more they have you hooked, the more money they make. And we even had this one person that was, I just call it stalking homeless people, panhandlers. He was going to shelters, and he would invite them to live with him, and then he would want to trade favors, and because he knows they're addicted for drugs, and they'll do whatever he wants. And I would like people like that prosecuted, especially the drug pushers, because they push things on people. And I'm not just talking about homeless people. They're pushing drugs on people that have good paying jobs, and it's really bad at the trailer park where I live. And Also, there is a assault at Christ Kitchen. I don't know if anyone solved it, but 3 people beat up someone with a baseball bat about a year and a half ago. And they also burnt down a house. I don't know who it is that did that, but it's off camera. I don't want to give the address, but I sure wish Keep Victoria Beautiful could fix that up or take care of it for free. But as far as the tent problem, where I live, there ain't tent problems, but they have people just living in their cars. And I used to just turn a blind eye, but it's getting really tough for me because someone tried to break in my trailer and I had to call the police, and I did take a picture of them. It was on my camera, and they did put a trespass warning. But what happened is the alleged drug pusher is pushing drugs on people, and they'll do anything to get that money to buy the alleged drugs. But we've had 4 felony arrest convictions and 2 Class A misdemeanors last year, and then animal abuse conviction in December last year. And of course, the trailer park manager was busted, and he was doing marijuana wax to high school kids and stuff like that. But I sure wish people could go after these drug pushers. Thanks, and have a good afternoon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Alleged.
Okay, we have Mr. Eric Mercer, and I didn't mention before Mr. Vonderall got up here, but please keep your remarks to 3 minutes.
Thank you for the moment. My question today, or not question, but my plea would be for clarity of what campground is referring to. Our business in town have vagrants that are living next door. They're yelling at our customers. They're actually littering into our waterways that go into our down to the river. So they're going as far as actually even when we leave or even when we're there, they take electricity from our business. They just plug in and run it. So when we call the law and ask them to come and refrain them from doing what they're doing, unfortunately, we're being told they have no authority to have them remove them from the premise. Unfortunately, it's county property in between our 2 businesses. So I asked for clarity so that we could understand what we can and can't allow and what law can and can't do. So I appreciate what you're trying to do. I just asked for clarity so that we can all understand and actually have what we can do. We have been referred, the police officers have told us do not embark on communication because they actually retaliate against the business. So if we ask them to leave, they typically vandalize our facility. So therefore, we do have to continue to waste the police officers' time to come forth and try to have a communication. So again, back to the fact that clarity of what a campground is or isn't and what they can and can't have, that way we understand what we have to do. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mercer. Mr. Foote, can we get that timer to work right, or are we having problems with it? There we go. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Stafford. It's good to see you. We haven't seen you in a while.
I blame it on COVID. I blame everything on COVID, including my gray hair and memory loss. Good afternoon. It's good to see you, some old friends and some new friends here. When I first became CEO at Midcoast, I went to a conference and they said, you got to learn how to toot your own horn, because if you don't toot your own horn, nobody else is. So that's what I'm going to do tonight, but it's not my horn, it's our collective horn. In February of this year, we celebrated 10 years at our new Women's Crisis Center. I know a couple of you have probably seen the old facility, but we've been located downtown in Old Town Victoria on the corner of River and Depot Street for more than 25 years. And you saw the building. We just about wore it out and used it up. It was a matter of time before we were not going to be able to operate out of that. So we gathered up a committee to help us figure out how to raise money. I was new on the job. Randy Vivian had just left to go to the chamber, and I was trying to figure out how to raise $1 million or $2 million when I didn't even know how to run a board meeting. But we got this great campaign committee together, and one of the campaign committee members was Robert Loeb. And Robert said, I have heard of some funds at the city called Community Block Grant Funds, CDBG, which I'd never heard of. And he said, let's go talk to city council and the mayor and everybody at the city and see if we can redirect those funds from how they have been used in the past to use them for facilities in the city to help people that are in crisis or unhoused or otherwise. So we did that. Robert and I went and visited every city council member and Mayor Polasic, and because of his forethought and because of our work, the decision was made to start using CDBG funds to help facilities like ours. As a result, we built almost a $2 million facility, which since over that time, we served between 300 and 400 children and adults every single year. So it has proven itself well. And not only that, as soon as we finished, we realized we'd underbuilt. So we've added on twice, with the most recent completion having been in 2021, a whole children's wing. We're amping up our efforts towards children. And I'm going to take a side note here just because you talked about it at the last meeting. Since 2012, there's a whole bunch of other stuff that's gone on, and I gave you a handout, and I want you to notice how much we have allocated in rental assistance funds, $1.6 million since the pandemic began. And that has nothing to do with what I'm talking about. I just wanted to brag a little bit about that one. But the reason I'm telling you about CDBG is because that decision that the city council made 10 and 12, 14 years ago changed Victoria. And I'm afraid the decision that you're contemplating making about the moratorium will change Victoria, but not in a way that's going to help. My advice to you is just to slow down. It took us 4 years to raise enough money and to find a contractor and to do all the things that we wanted to do to build the shelter. It's going to take a long time before anything is done before our people living on the streets and are otherwise unhoused. If you'll take the time, meet with us, let's do some work groups. You've got a lot of people that are willing to work with you, and my name is first on the list. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Stafford. Mr. Swanson.
Good afternoon.
Howdy.
Good to see you again. I'm here for a rare meeting to let you know you guys got it tough, and you got some tough problems to solve. And I'm rooting for you, okay? It's going to be tough. Your toughest part's coming in August, right? That's when you actually look at the budget. Things that are easy to approve but difficult to get through the budget process. Be careful, okay? I trust you guys know what you're doing. You've been through this before. It's challenging. Keep up the good work on that, but you're being corrupted by free money. And it's free in the freest sense of the word. They're just printing it. Okay, it does not exist. And be careful of that temptation. And I know you guys will. And I wanted to come down and let you know that I support you through the tough times, but you're going to have to go back to the voters. And whatever you approve, you got to be able to say we want it. Let's say I'm for the homeless. And I'm for the homeless, although I believe the solution for the homeless is we provide free transportation to Austin. But it's difficult to say no, but are the taxpayers the ones that are supposed to fund it? Are we supposed to fund that? Or is there other places that's supposed to fund that? Everybody's living outside their budget. Everybody's living outside their budget. And we have to be careful because you only have a certain amount of budget for Victoria. And we got a lot of problems. I mean, you drive down through Victoria and you see that everything's not as good as you want it to be. So keep up the good work. And I support you in your tough decisions, and you're going to make some tough decisions. And some people ain't gonna like it, and probably I might be one of them, but you do what you guys need to do. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Okay.
Y'all have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Ms. Hastings.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. I'm Trish Hastings, Executive Director of Christ Kitchen, and I really can't add anything to what Ms. Stafford said. We respectfully request a meeting with council or council representatives to sit down and discuss our options for helping our homeless community. Please grant us that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Aldis.
Good evening, City Council members. My name is Joshua Aldis. According to the homeless community, my name is Wolf. As about 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have been dressed like this. I wouldn't even have the courage to stand in front of you people. But there is a problem with the homeless community. We need some help, and that's all we're asking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aldis. Mrs. Beaver.
Hi, good evening. I just want to reiterate, myself and several other advocates in the community would like a conversation rather than us speaking at you and you, I guess, just writing whatever's on the agenda, and we're not really understanding each other, where we're at, where we're seeing, this going. I would love to have a conversation to tell you what our plan is, show you what our plan is, and hear from you what you think needs to be done, rather than just putting a stop to it for now and just listening to what we have planned. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Chavez.
My name is Nora Chavez, and I've been working at Christ Kitchen, and I've been volunteering and helping the homeless, and some of them are trying to get their things straightened up, and I wish they would need more help because they really need help from everybody. But it's up to your mind, and I help people. I've always been helping people, and I used to work at some other things, and I was homeless too. And thank you.
Chavez. Ms. Salazar?
Hello, my name is Graciela Salazar, and I want to thank you for this time. I'm a community navigator, but come to you as a representative of our Lord Jesus Christ. I'm involved in several ministries in your community, our community, and have experienced homelessness myself. And know it can hit anyone, whatever their education, background, social status, from job loss, family breakdown, or an illness. Any illness, COVID being one of the main ones that we've been dealing with. When I try to connect people in your community, our community, with resources, I start with the churches and have experienced a lot of no's when it comes to rent. And I'm directed to Midcoast and Community Action and have been told they already run out of funds and they've been swamped. And it's still the beginning of the month. So it's just not the people in encampments, but everywhere, doubled up. I'm praying that some of the money given on the CARES Act can go to nonprofit organizations such as the Humility Project, Christ Kitchen, and so on, for when Community Action and Midcoast run out of funds allotted for that month. I've tried to understand the proposed moratorium and all the legalities, but come down to this. Kim Pickens and Patricia Hastings are so passionate in trying to help others in need and as well as us and the other community navigators. We are the voice for the outcast, the broken, the unwanted. And we try to do whatever we can to help those that are in need. And we need the help from the city to do it, to sit and meet with them, to find a common ground. From the encampments to the embracing hope, we are here to help others in need. It takes a team, a village, to come together and find a solution because it's getting worse. You think 2020 and 2021 were bad. 2022, January, I had like 20 calls in one day for help. If we can care about structures and the beautification of Victoria, what about our humans, people? Please be a part of the solution. That's why you were voted, for city council to help the people. We trust you, we love you. We thank you for all the stuff you do. We just wanna be heard and meet with y'all, I'm gonna end with the scripture, Proverbs 21:13. Those who shut their ears to the cries of the poor will be ignored in their own time of need. We have family members, each one of us, that have experienced some type of tragedy and became homeless. Thank y'all very much. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar. Mr. or Mrs. Kalk? Kim?
Good afternoon or evening. Thank y'all very much for this opportunity. Yeah, the main thing that we're asking today is before you do anything, at least sit down with us and see what we're proposing. Because making a blanket do nothing before we ever know what we're doing, it just doesn't seem fair. We just want a conversation. Let's sit down and let's look at what we're proposing versus what's good for this city. And 2 weeks ago, at the last council meeting, I identified how we do have homeless that are addicted. We do have homeless that are mentally ill, but we cannot help them while they're on the street. They're unstable. Until we get them in a stable bed where they're safe for the night, we cannot help them with that. And we cannot house them till we stabilize them. And stabilizing them, if we send them to treatment, they're gonna come back and go right back to the street. If we send them to a mental hospital, they're gonna go right back to the street. And not only on that side of it, but on the other side of it, like the gentleman was saying earlier, the businesses in this town have had problems because these people are in front of their businesses. They're making their businesses look bad at times. They vandalized if they do anything about it. I understand everything that he said. And it's also, the police are called out for all these things, and there's absolutely nothing they can do. We don't have mental health officers. We don't have a mental health hospital. We don't have a shelter to take them to. There's nowhere to put them. When the police do go there, what will they do? Arrest them for not having a home? They're called out multiple times and sometimes daily for the same person. There's shoplifting, calls for people they're just hungry. They just want something to eat. Or they are stealing for drugs because they're mentally ill or they're on the street. And if they're not mentally ill when they get there, they are now. And they need some sort of medicine to help them. So they self-medicate. It is a big problem. It is where a lot of the stealing comes from. But then, and they have their animals. And we give them tickets for these animals that don't have licenses. And they can't pay them. Hospitals are overrun. The police are overrun. Our resources are being chewed up when we can fix this. And those resources can go somewhere else to people that really need it. This is something everybody needs, but apparently not everybody wants. But let's sit down and talk about what is needed.
Thank you, Ms. Kalk. And I apologize, I can't read the writing on this last one. It looks like an angel pepper.
He's in the men's room. May I get him?
Yes, if you hurry, please. Okay. Well, thanks. With that, we'll close citizens' communication tonight. Thank you all for being here and presenting to us. We have no items for public hearings, and we'll go into our consent agenda.
Item D1 is the adoption of minutes of the March 1st, 2022 regular meeting. Item D2 is an ordinance vacating, closing, and abandoning certain alleys in response to the petition of 100% of the adjoining landowners. This item is on second and third reading. Item D3 is an ordinance abandoning Herod Avenue and Avenue A being unimproved rights-of-ways within the Herod subdivision and located east of South Laurent Street and north of Pleasant Green Drive.
Excuse me just a minute. Could y'all please take that outside? Could y'all please go outside so you don't disturb the meeting? Thank you. Go ahead.
This item is also on second and third reading. And item D4 is a resolution approving a professional services agreement with Gary Middleton for representation and consultation services related to municipal water supply in the amount of $24,000.
Thank you.
I'll move for approval of the consent agenda. Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item E1.
Item E1 is a resolution awarding the 2021-22 striping project in various locations to Pavement Markings Incorporated of Donna, Texas for their competitive sealed bid proposal in the amount of $169,930.21.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. I'll keep this brief. This is for the striping project this year. Oh, went too fast. Okay. Pavement Markings Incorporated was the only proposal we received. They have done a lot of work in Victoria. They've done, I think, 2 or 3 past projects, and they also do a lot of the pavement markings for the local and out-of-town contractors that come in town. Calendar day project is 120 days at a cost of $169,930. Project overview, they'll prepare the pavement in preparation to prior the painting. It's a thermoplastic hot applied paint. It's used typically on all the state highways as well as, in our city. Estimated quantity is 56,000 linear feet of the yellow, 7,200 linear feet of the 4-inch white, and 811 feet of the stop bars, and then 813 feet of the 12-inch crosswalks. Again, they've done this project before. This is the first map, and this one is located on, and I'm gonna have to look real close. It's on Millette Street from Loop 463 up to the city limits. And this one will be doing a double yellow and as well as the white edge lines. We've been doing that in the last few years. It identifies that lane a little better, keeps them off of the edge of the road where the pavement's a little softer and can wear quicker.
Ken, I have a question on that, because I drive that every day. Can we have a conversation about appropriate level ups? Because it'd be very difficult to probably stripe that with some of the divots and, anyway, just a conversation.
We can talk on that later, yes.
Okay.
The next one is located on Southwest Bend Jordan and I'm trying to read my map, Goodwin Street. These are both city streets. Again, what we did is as we drive the streets in Victoria, we look at the ones that are faded out and that need attention. This one is this concrete section of John Stockbauer from 59 to 59.
The north arrow is pointing to the right on this one and the one before it. I've spent a long time trying to figure out how these streets are related. This one isn't as bad, but I couldn't get Goodwin here and Ben Jordan over here to make sense until I.
We can work on those maps.
I just
We'll
wanted
get the
to point
north
out
arrow.
that-
It should be pointing straight up, you're right. And the next one is Mockingbird, and this one is from,
I
let me
really
look.
struggled with this one
I'm
too.
looking at this one too. It's from Vine Street, which is Main Street, all the way to Navarro Street. And that one is, for whatever reason, I'll be honest, that street eats up striping more than any street in Victoria. But we're hitting it again. It goes quick. And that's it. We also, because we have a budget amount of $200,000, we plan to do other striping needs in town as we see. There'll be other crosswalks that we may add if we get calls. So I encourage the public, if you see something that's needed striping or crosswalk or stop bars, feel free to call. We've already, informed the contractor. Please, there'll be some extras as we move forward. Project award will be today. Execute the contracts in April, and then begin the striping in May and complete in September.
So if someone was to suggest an area that needs striping as far as crosswalks, when would they need to get that to you? Because if the project kicking off in May, I don't know what the material lead time is, but I would venture to guess that if they came to you in July, it's probably too late.
They probably could if we get some. As long as I got the contractor here and they're working in town, we can add things as we move forward. The material is strictly a paint, and they use a stencil versus basically the other one is a hot applied thermo, which they put the material down and then they heat it up with the torch. We found that grays out a lot quicker than just the plain paint with a stencil.
Okay. And
But feel free for the city. Yes, feel free for the citizens to call anytime. Our number is 361-485-3381. Thank you.
I have a question kind of related to that. I think at least one of these streets is concrete, and the rest of them, I think, are asphalt. So they're familiar now with the right way to stripe, because apparently you do it differently on concrete than on asphalt.
It's a little different. The difference being on a concrete pavement that is fresh and new, such as Crestwood, you have to go in there and clean that pavement, and then you have to put a primer down. Otherwise, that thermoplastic just sits on it, and it'll actually just flake off and chip off. And so that's what we're doing primarily, like Crestwood. And then same thing when we do Placido, we're gonna have to take that off and really clean it and then put a primer down, and that's included in the bid.
Ken, currently on Mockingbird, there's construction and striping going on from Navarro to Laurent.
Yes, but this striping is from Main Street to Navarro. It's that one section where it fades out real quick.
So that was previously approved under a different agenda, correct?
Right. The other section that they're doing the street work on, that will get, the pavement markings is included in the project as far as the mill and overlay goes. And that'll be on Airline and on Mockingbird.
And they'll be way done with that before this even kicks off.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And it'll be more than likely it's the same contractor.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody like to make a motion?
I move we adopt this item.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve item E1. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. E2.
Item E2 is a resolution temporarily prohibiting administrative approval of private campgrounds in the city limits to allow time to develop regulations protecting public health and safety.
Lacey, do you have any type of presentation for us?
I do, but I wanted to remind you that there are several ways that we can handle this particular resolution, if you'd like to discuss those first, or if you want me to go ahead with the presentation.
Sure. We discuss the ways that we can handle the presentation.
Absolutely.
Right?
So it is on the agenda, but if no one wants to make a motion in a second, no action actually has to be taken. You can choose to remove the item and continue to discuss it without making any decisions at this point. That would just simply need to be an agreement amongst council members to do so. You can discuss it, or you can table it until a future meeting. That's up to y'all how y'all would like to handle it this evening.
Okay. Ms. Scott, I'm going to defer to you.
I'm still trying to figure out the options. I guess I've talked to city attorney a little bit, and I'm not completely clear on what she's trying to explain to us, but I have the impression that the discussion amongst council as to what we would like in terms of the ordinance is more important to them than the need for the moratorium or the prohibition itself. And Am I correct about that? That you need to hear more what we want in the ordinance, that there's not really a great urgency of the prohibition on issuing permits?
That's correct. So at this time, what we would, since we're not suggesting an ordinance tonight, simply a resolution, what we would do is issue direction to staff to basically research the issue, look into the health and safety potential issues that might arise from private campgrounds, tent cities, is used last week, man camps, whatever term you want to look into, and then use that information to craft an ordinance and regulations that we'd bring back at a later time for y'all to discuss and decide then. And this basically would allow us to have a larger conversation and gather the information that we need in order to craft that correctly.
So I would ask council's indulgence to have discussion without the formality of the motion and second.
In other words, is that the same as tabling it?
No,
Is that,
you can just leave it sitting there.
Okay,
We can decide to pull it from the agenda and still have a discussion on it.
Love to have a discussion.
Yeah. And, you know, at the end of it, and we decide, oh, we want to put it back on the agenda for 2 weeks from now, we can, right? Okay.
Well, also, what needs to be discussed, for my understanding, is the definition of encampments and campgrounds within the city limits. We already have building ordinances on houses, RV parks, and we have a no camping ordinance. So I need clarification from city council, legal counsel, sorry, on what exactly this moratorium would do or not do. So there's a lot of confusion, and so I appreciate you go ahead and let's not take action on it.
Right, I think that we need to have some discussion at, starting now on, because the moratorium was giving us 8 months to come up with the ordinance. Well, we wouldn't have the moratorium, but we just would be working on the ordinance. And so, for one, because we haven't even yet discussed this, staff needs to know that we do want this ordinance and to talk about it.
And another question I would have, are there any pending approvals of, or approvals for campgrounds being developed in the city limits now? Is there something pending?
No, and correct me if
Staff
I'm.
says no.
That's not really
If I'm correct, if someone came forward right now with such a proposal, it would necessitate a site plan. And
Exactly what I'm.
site plan would have to follow our current ordinances, of which it depends on how they decided to build it, but more than likely would require variances. At which point, it would just still come back before us again if they kept appealing it, if it didn't get approved. So there's still a mechanism already in place right now that takes care of anything that gets submitted between now and until we can get an ordinance that better defines camping, encampments, private campgrounds, what we expect of it. Do we even want it?
Exactly, because what I envision in a certain way is someone without a proper definition and explanation of what we're voting on. I see something like this. How do I put this? Someone with bad intent saying, well, the city doesn't have any type of policy or procedure. Why don't I put up 6 tents in my backyard and exploit the homeless for everything I can? And I don't want that to happen to our homeless. Our homeless are very, very important. They need assistance for living, but I don't want an ill-advised person or a bad person saying, well, I'm going to exploit because the city doesn't have anything in place to prevent that. And there are people that injure and take advantage of our homeless, and that's what I'm trying to make sure that we can prevent. So that's why I need a better explanation of what exactly are we voting on or not voting on, and why. Thank you.
Yeah, just to echo that a little bit, I had some real questions about kind of the moratorium in terms of what happens during this time period. What does that process look like? What do we need to do? What does staff need to do? How much communication is there with the agencies, with the nonprofits, with the various ministries that are involved, from the standpoint that we've seen more communication when we're putting things together and drafting, the better, rather than having to do that after the fact. It makes a lot of sense to have that coordination, to have those communications and discussions up front rather than later. The other question I had was just the time period on that. I mean, how much time do we really need to put something together? There was a time period proposed. I wasn't sure where that time period came from or how it fit in with what processes need to happen, which is why I had the question about the process. I think certainly I would echo Mr. Del Garza from the standpoint, I think we do need to have some things in place for the safety of the residents of these proposed facilities, but also health and safety of the surrounding property owners and that sort of thing. So, I'm in favor of more discussions and open communications with the community about these before we just say, well, we're not going to do these or we are going to do these. I think we need to learn more. I think right now we've scratched the surface on this particular issue on these types of facilities. But I think to jump in and say, oh, we're going to do this or not do this at this point, probably premature from my standpoint.
I agree with everything he said. We need more information. I want to thank all the people that came and spoke. I've learned more from you speaking and the good thing about this, we're actually talking about homelessness, okay? It's sad that it has to get to this way and then we talk about it. I think the council needs to understand what you're requesting. I thought that Jenny Stafford made an important point about CBGG funds, which are federal funds. We need to know, I need to know more about what the homeless agencies do, how we could help you, but I will tell you this, I don't want a tent city next to my property. I don't want a neighborhood, and homeless people don't want to live in a tent city. So we do need to have a conversation, but we need to know, and there was a gentleman who spoke about how it causes problems with the police and business. This is a problem that we really need to discuss, and we really need to understand before we make any ordinances. But we need an ordinance. We don't need tent cities next to people's houses. And that's what people are very concerned about. So, but somehow, before we do this ordinance, we all need to be educated on what you just spoke about, because I can give you numbers, but it doesn't tell me and I got a lot of great letters from people, and it was helpful. But I need to know more about the homeless situation in Victoria so that we can craft a decent piece of legislation and that we can help you.
Yeah, well said.
Very well
I
said, Mark.
echo everybody else up on the dais in regards to that about not being informed enough. Would like to know what surrounding communities, we're not the first one. I don't think we need to reinvent the wheel here, but find out what other communities are doing and how they've been successful. And if they've made mistakes, let's try to avoid those mistakes. But I think there's a wealth of information out there that we could probably glean from that. We've been up here talking about animal stuff before and stepped out, and I think we've learned that communication and obtaining as much information before we make a decision is probably the best for all.
I agree with all this conversation, but I'd also like to point out that I'm proposing a land use regulation. The narrative has shifted to what we can do for a homeless population, and this dais is not the solution or the be-all and end-all. And I've gotten a lot of communication about why aren't you spending your time doing that? It is a community problem. The city does the parts that it can. And so I just want to make sure that we and the public understands that what we're looking at is land use and complementary land uses. We're not looking at being a fundraiser. We're not looking at solving the problem as part of this particular ordinance.
Yes, I think that's great direction as well.
Thank you.
So
May
Ms.
I?
Yes, go ahead.
I'm going to try to answer everyone, but if I miss somebody's question, just remind me what it was, because that was a whole lot. So I'm going to start with Councilman Scott, because yes, what we are talking about here is a land use regulation. And under the Local Government Code, Chapter 212, we can do that. However, it has to be based on some sort of public safety factor, that has to be behind it. So what we would do, and we have started communications and conversations within city staff, i.e. the PD and the fire marshal and development services, as to what those concerns are and what we can do to address them. So we have started those conversations already. So what we would look at, just, to throw it out there, are things like maximum lot sizes, maximum densities, minimum amenities, things like that. What, parking lots, plumbing, utilities, all of those things. We would certainly look into what would need to be required, and then we can craft ordinances, an ordinance or ordinances later, that is geared towards making sure that, quite frankly, the public at large and the people who are going to be in these communities have all the things that they need, and they do have some sort of regulation so that they're up to our building codes and our standards and so on and so forth. To answer your question, I believe, Mr. De La Garza, there is nothing we can do right now about someone putting 6 tents in their backyard. That's private property. They can technically do as they please. However, the point of this ordinance would be, that would be considered basically a change in land use, and then that would trigger the ordinance that we're going to craft that says, if you're going to use your backyard for that sort of thing, then that could potentially lead you to have to comply with the ordinance and all of the other things that we've discussed. Councilman Crocker, what were your questions? I cannot remember both of them.
Mine was just more about the process.
Right.
When we were talking about the moratorium, what the process for crafting this looked like during any potential period. It sounds like we're not going to have that period, or at least we're not voting on that. But my question would be, is there a plan in place in terms of how we go forward to look at these type of restrictions?
There is a plan in place we're kind of in the beginning stages of. The beginning is the conversations. What is it that we're worried about? What are the concerns? What are the things that we need to address? And then we'll go from there. The November 15th deadline was just we picked a date that was far enough out that we knew that we would have enough time to do the right amount of research to put this together, but also to make it clear that what was in the resolution was not permanent. So we expect that we can probably do it in less time than that, but we wanted to give ourselves and council enough time to come to the right decisions and the right conclusions on that. So that's why that deadline was out there. Like I said before, it's going to be a matter right now of information gathering and talking, and as Councilman Young suggested, looking at other cities and what have they done and what worked, what didn't, and so on and so forth, and then putting that together, bringing it back to y'all to discuss and to review and ultimately hopefully vote on. What the resolution attempted to do tonight, because we don't have current regulations in place for private land use. Obviously, as y'all are aware, private property is private property, and there's only so many things that we can do. What this resolution was addressing was if the city was to receive site plans for things such as, new tent cities, as we're calling them, or anything with a structure that doesn't meet current building standards. But without those site plans being submitted at this point, there's nothing that we could have done to make that, to regulate that in any way. So when we get the ordinance in place, that will allow us to hopefully address those issues and make them safe for all of the citizens of the city of Victoria. And that's where we are right now. Like I said, we're in the beginning stages of this. This is a conversation that just came up 2 weeks ago. So we want to get it right when we put something in place. And so we'd like the time, to really, really look into it and get everybody's opinions and have those conversations.
And again, to stress, I think what I'm hearing up here is, make sure that the community and the various organizations are part of that process and discussions, because I think that's huge to come up with something that works.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
Great.
Anybody else have any questions for Ms. Lacy? No? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Allison.
Okay, item F1.
All right, so moving right along to city manager's reports, we've got a few for you tonight. We're gonna kick off with the annual report for Parks and Recreation. So I'm gonna ask Jason to step up to the podium and provide his presentation.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Thank you, Mr. Garza. All right. So this is the time I'm able to take a little bit of time and talk about all the really cool things that Parks and Recreation has been doing over the last year. And quite frankly, it was a lot, and it was really hard to kind of hone in on some of these things. And so if I do miss something, I apologize right off the top. So just to kind of get things going, you'll see that kind of a sports tourism or a sports theme is in this PowerPoint, trying to keep it light and definitely in line with some of our focuses for this upcoming year. But nonetheless, we definitely want to recap on some of our achievements that we have throughout 2021, talk about some of the park projects that we were able to accomplish, some that are still ongoing, definitely talk about some of the numbers that we have as far as statistics for the community center rentals, our golf course, as well as our ball fields. And then, of course, our future when it comes to the Parks and Recreation Department and then sports tourism in general. I'll go ahead and get started. So 2021 definitely came with a lot of the achievements. We were, obviously it's Parks and Recreation, but it's Parks, Recreation, and Community to us. We definitely had some really cool things going on in the park, but one of the things that we're able to do in the top right picture is overcome some of the obstacles that we have, right? Whether it's man-made or just, from the good Lord up above. So we were able to overcome some of the flooding issues that we had in October. I know it's kind of been a long time, but we were down for quite some time in that regard, so we wanted to make sure that we captured that. But really, over this past year, we've been really focused on some of our maintenance in our parks and recreation. Maintenance when it comes to upgrading some of our signs, like you can see in the Memorial Garden sign, some of our playgrounds that we have, just trying to get those nice and spruced up and cleaned. Addressing some of our safety issues, you can see that in that middle picture with them taking out a tree stump in the middle of a playground area. And so, we really wanted to be focused on the safety aspect of things, the maintenance aspect, and the park side of it. Of course, we have the community aspect of it as well. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan was a really big component of what we were doing in our projects for this past year, and that obviously being a huge community-driven plan. And we're thankful that we're able to get that adopted last year. Education was a really big piece of it as well, really trying to partner and work with other organizations such as the Master Gardeners, and really having some educational components focusing on the outdoors. Quality of life was a really big thing, right? It's Parks and Recreation. So one of the things that we're able to accomplish this past year is opening up splash pads longer and basically doubling those operational hours. And so just having another opportunity for the community to come out and enjoy some of our parks and amenities that we have. So with all of that being said, kind of focusing more on the park's maintenance, you can see here there's a multitude of pictures that we have available to show you, but one of the things was cleanliness. I mentioned it earlier, really wanted to focus on just keeping our parks in top shape. A fresh coat of paint definitely goes a long way, and it's very noticeable within the community. Again, like I mentioned, the removing of the safety issues. One of the things that isn't listed on here that we have been really focusing on is tracking our hours in our parks department, really trying to focus on where our maintenance hours are being spent. How can we readjust some of that if needed, and then where can we find some of our efficiencies and deficiencies? It's really nice to be able to see a snapshot of our parks maintenance team and see where they're spending the bulk of their time. I can tell you right now, they were spending the bulk of their time in mowing grass and basically trash and restrooms. We're switching that. We still definitely want to, that's a piece of the puzzle, but we have a 500 puzzle piece that we're working with. And so while that's a piece of it, there's other components that we want to focus on as well. One of the big things that only comes around probably once a year, and it's the summertime, is the mosquitoes. So we started last year the integrated pest management program, so our mosquito abatement program. That was a really big goal that we were able to achieve, and we're happy about that. So we'll be pushing out more of a proactive approach with mosquito abatement in regards to that versus a reactive approach. And so we're super excited about that. We established a memorial bench program. That was something that was really, really neat. Our assistant director, Kimberly, she was really involved with that. And so just another way to have individuals memorialize, their family members or other folks. So one of the other things that we were able to accomplish was the Evergreen cemetery maps. When I first got here, we were starting to look at the unmarked graves of the Evergreen cemetery and trying to cross-reference those. And so we were able to digitize that and get all of our maps updated. And some of the bigger things that we're working on internally is just trying to build a team environment, really wanting to focus on our personnel, focus on the training and the certifications that they're able to obtain. And so we're really just pushing that, wanting to get them certified playground inspectors, wanting to get them irrigation, qualified and licenses with Texas Department of Agriculture. So with all that being said, we still like to have fun, and so we definitely want to make sure that our folks are having fun. And you can see Richard there on the Kubota tractor with his leg, kicked up on the steering wheel, getting ready for Christmas. So definitely work hard, but we also want to make sure that we're able to play not hard, but have fun, I guess, and play hard too.
Could you expand a little bit on how you can be proactive with mosquitoes? That makes me a little nervous that we're all going to be dumping our tires, but you're not going to come spray. And I want to make sure that's not what you're saying.
No, that is not what we're saying. No, ma'am, not at all. So reactive is what we were. So what we were doing in the past was waiting for people to kind of call us, if you will, finding these locations where we're really getting the calls and targeting those areas. In addition to that, we would have staff that would go out, they may recognize an area that had stagnant water, and those are the areas that we would kind of look at. Versus what we're going to now is going to be a proactive approach to where we have mosquito traps that we're going to set out, and then we'll check for those. And, a presentation that I made a while back was that, the male mosquitoes don't bite, it's the female mosquitoes that bite. And so if we're noticing that in those traps we have male mosquitoes, we know that they're not biting mosquitoes. So we can focus our efforts somewhere else. In addition to that, that'll help us with just timing, right, with staff and chemicals as well.
Oh, thank you very much.
Absolutely. Yes, ma'am. All right. Of course, recreation is a huge component of Parks and Rec, right? So a couple of the things I've been working on in recreation is really intentional programs and organizations that we partner with. We're really being intentional with the people that we're connecting with. And what I mean by that is Southside Coalition, for instance, working with them, or partnering with them on like the Back to School Bash and really being involved with the Southside community. In addition to that, partnering with our internal departments like the Police Department for National Night Out and some of the other departments that you see listed there, such as the library, environmental services, et cetera. And so again, that's just a really big intentional focus that we're looking at and wanting to program out some of our recreation programs throughout our parks. That can kind of be seen through our spring break that we're doing right now. We're going to continue to find gaps in services. We realize that the YMCA and some other organizations kind of fill those roles with the teens or the youth, and so maybe that's something that where there's a gap in service, maybe the active adults, and so we're definitely looking at that and trying to be intentional in our focus. One of the big things that a lot of people really don't see, but it's on the back end of it, is that we've been working really closely with our EOC, our Emergency Operations Command, because anytime that we have a large event such as the Parade of Lights, that involves a lot of players, a lot of people, and so we want to make sure that everybody's safe while they're having fun. And so anytime that we have a crowd of 1,000 or more, we're touching base with our EOC, making sure that everybody's involved and really coming together to make a great event and program happen. And of course, we have some really large movements on when it comes to sports tourism. TAF was a really big thing that we're able to secure. Last year, we were able to actually secure the games, although this year we hosted them. But nonetheless, last year, just knowing that we're able to have those games here for the next 3 years was a really big check in that box. And so we're really excited about that. I can tell you that we just came back from, a few of the folks came back from a conference. It's a Texas Recreation and Park Society. It's a statewide conference for recreation and parks professionals. Lots of people there and lots of good stuff about Victoria. A lot of people came up to me from different cities and just said, hey, y'all are doing some really cool stuff down there. Y'all need to keep it up. We're checking out y'all's Facebook page. Y'all are doing some really cool stuff with sports. So just wanted to pass that along, that we're also getting seen in Parks and Recreation world outside of Victoria. So good stuff happening.
Hey, for the TAAF,
Yes, sir.
or TAF, as they like to call it. Isn't that second weekend coming up soon?
It just happened. It
Oh,
was
did it?
March, yes, sir. I believe it was March 5th and 6th. We had flag football over at the community center. That was probably the largest draw. We had 400 participants over a 2-day. Yes, sir.
I saw it over there, that's right.
Yeah, that one was really cool. They had, I thought wheelchair basketball was rough. Man, flag football is even worse. Let's see, so some of the projects that we were able to accomplish in 2021, of course, the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, that was the biggest one that we had on our plate. Thankful for everybody's participation in that, and of course, able to present it to City Council back in November and got that adopted. It was an 11-month process and lots of community input, lots of community feedback, and so that was just a great plan to be able to push out. In addition to that, we're able to have a ribbon cutting for the soccer fields, and VYSO was able to have their fall games, and then now have kicked back up into their spring season. And so we're definitely excited about Riverside Soccer Field Complex. And then one of the smaller projects was a memorial square. So we actually, at the end of last year, we had some ground penetrating radar come out and mark the graves or the sites where there was some items underneath or some graves underneath the ground. And so those have been marked. Those have been converted over onto a GIS overlaid. And then we've actually went out there, staff, and put pins in the ground so that way we can find them later down the road. And so just some more things that we've been doing to be able to continue some of the projects that we know may be continuing to move forward. The duck pond. That's a big one, right? Every time it's, where's the duck pond? So the duck pond, in 2021, we were able to submit a grant, actually receive the funding. I think we submitted the grant back in 2020, and then we got approval in 2021 from Texas Parks and Wildlife for $621,000. And so we're definitely excited about that, being able to continue to push that project on. Kind of where we're at right now with the duck pond, it's currently out for bid. So it'll be out for bid for the next 4 weeks. And we're looking at having a non-mandatory pre-bid meeting on the 23rd, recommendations and a contract, hopefully to council in May, and then we can go ahead and move forward with construction. Anticipated construction is about 14 to 16 months.
How deep is the duck pond at its deepest spot?
Oh, I knew there was going to be a question that I couldn't answer.
I'm looking at all this, I guess, topography. I mean, is it like a 2-foot duck pond all around, or is it deeper than that, or?
No, ma'am, it's deeper than that. I want to venture to say it's probably around 6 to 8 feet deep. The topography you see in there is more of a tiered system. That's going to be because of the fish habitat. So we touch base with Texas Parks and Wildlife, inland fisheries. And so that way, they suggested that, and so that's the way they built it.
So there could potentially be some sponsored fishing events out there. Is that part of why, or? I'm
yes,
just throwing questions at you, I'm sorry.
We could definitely look at that. But yes, the intent was for that, to be able to stock it and to have fish there. And then, in addition to that, it's also could be an educational component, right? I mean, we have fish habitat, and how does that work and how does that look, and just have signage out there for educational purposes as well.
It would just be biologically okay on its own. We wouldn't have to do a lot of maintenance as well.
Correct, yes, ma'am.
That's good.
Yeah, tell me about it. Okay, next one that we actually kind of kicked off at the end of last year, and so I wanted to put this on everybody's radar, but Riverside Dog Park. So we selected a consultant at the end of last year for design and construction management. What ended up happening in late 2021, or 2021, gosh, yeah, 2021 already. Survey was completed and topography was kind of shown throughout the area, and so we just got this rough design from our consultant. And so as we continue to move through this, we'll work with the Parks and Recreation Commission as well as the Girl Scout troop to be able to continue pushing this project forward. We're hopefully able to have this design completed by the end of this month, first part of next month, issued a bid about a month after that, sometime in May, and hopefully we'll be able to have construction start sometime in the summer, probably around July. The consultant gave us about a 5 to 6 month window for construction. I think that's pretty long. I think we can shorten that down to about 3 or 4 months. But nonetheless, we have the Riverside Dog Park rocking and rolling with about 30% design.
Will you be building in maintenance of that in your budget for the next year?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All of these with a little bit of extra. We want to make sure that when we build it, it stays at that same level.
So I'm not super familiar with many breeds of dog, but I couldn't help but notice there's a large dog park and a small dog park, but also that the large dog park is larger than the small dog park. So I didn't know whether that was just saying this is the large park and this is the small park, or if it was large dogs and small dogs.
Right. That's a good way to look at it. I didn't ever look at it that way, but yes, ma'am, it is. It's more so for the larger dogs. So, we could put a weight limit on it, say 40 pounds and above, and then a smaller dog park section for, your beagles, if you will, and your little chihuahuas and those kinds of things. But really having that separation just because of potential issues that could arise from the large and the small dogs playing together.
And that typically is self-regulated. People hold themselves honest, hey, your dog shouldn't be on this side, it should be on that side. And so
yeah,
it has a way of just working out.
Okay.
Good. All right. Kind of going into the golf course now. Golf course has been doing really well. It's kind of like everywhere with the pandemic. Golf courses have been on that's the thing. Everybody's able to go out and kind of do their own thing and self-distance. So golf course has been doing really well. The rounds played have increased about 1,919 rounds with a total round increase of about 3,100. Our annual passes are down just a little bit, about 100. Our seniors and our juniors are up by about 730 or so, and our tournaments are up by about 1,500. Again, our total rounds are looking really well. We're about 31,500 rounds right now total. So when compared that to last year, we're looking at about 28,000 rounds. And so we're continuing to increase in the overall rounds that we're getting over at the golf course. Still talking with Rolando, trying to find that sweet spot. Will probably be around that 35,000 mark if we are able to hit that mark. But just, between clubhouse and playing conditions, we're doing really well with the upkeep at the golf course. So really excited about that. The community center. Community center was a little bit interesting to me because our total rentals actually had doubled from, our city rentals had actually doubled from the year in 2019. And so what that is, to me, it shows that, we're just utilizing the community center a little bit more often typically Monday through Thursdays. And that's a goal kind of ours anyway with recreation, is to continue to find those low times in the community center, and be able to program some of those things out and really utilize the community center in a different form. Definitely want to keep open with the weekends and try to push those rentals. And so our city rentals in 2021 was right around 100. Outside organizations, we had 89 rentals with a total rental of the community center of 189 rentals. Again, that you can start to see over the years, it's continued to progress, trying to catch back up to 2019. So we'll definitely be intentional with that when it comes to our sports tourism manager as well, and trying to focus on community center events and how we can bring more of them here to the community. Our ball field stayed the same, so this would be our softball as well as our ball field complex. Overall, it stayed the same. We had 28 rentals or 28 tournaments total. Our adult softball actually went down by about 2, and our youth sports or our youth tournaments went up by the same amount. And so they basically washed each other out. Riverside Stadium went down 1. No real rhyme or reason for that. It's something that we want to be more intentional on, is not only show you the stats for the ball fields, but we also want to show you the sports stats, right? So disc golf that we have coming in, we want to be able to show you stats for that. And so that's we're hoping this tourism manager to be able to help push those kind of statistics so we can help present that to you at the next annual presentation. And then kind of wrapping it up, so what does our future in Parks and Recreation look like? Kind of looks like all of that you see on the picture, on the pictures spread throughout. We want to focus and be inclusive, diverse of parks and programs, and focus on providing safe environments for everybody, regardless of their abilities. And, you know, one of those focuses is the Challenged Athletes Complex. We're working with those individuals in the YMCA to really, really push that. And so, you know, of course, one of the focus is going to be the master plan. A lot of good priorities and you know, just good conversations there. We actually have a meeting with our Parks and Recreation Commission this Saturday. We're going to have a workshop to discuss our top 5 priorities and where we want to go over the next year. And we'll continue those conversations like that every year, be able to prioritize the commission and where we need to head. Of course, we'll continue to find gaps in services and provide those services if we're able to, and focus on all parts of park maintenance. Again, providing more recreation programs at the community center and an emphasis on sports tourism, working with the CVB and other organizations to really enhance sports tourism here within the city. Which leads me to my next slide, which is solely dedicated to sports tourism. You know, this has really been a big focus, obviously, with the 2035 comp plan, with that being included within that plan. So we want to focus on providing diverse sporting events and marketing Victoria as basically the South Texas sports destination. We think we have the facilities. We have a lot of interest from the community, a lot of organizations that are coming to us now and saying, hey, we have this idea for this event. We have this idea for this tournament. What can we do? And we're like, well, hold on, just wait till Michelle gets here. Give us a week and a half. But seriously, I mean, those are the things that we're talking about. Looking at national level, what can we host here? Talking with UHV and those players, how can we start bringing more collegiate type activities? Can we bring recruiters here? And how can we continue to market Victoria as a sports tourism destination? So again, we'll just be capturing data, trying to gather all of that input. We want to continue to build relationships with tournament directors and really have them here in Victoria roll out the red carpet for them. Of course, collaborate with other internal departments that can enhance our offerings. And then, yeah, just work with businesses that want to host some of the events and tournaments here.
And I think that's a very, it's a missed opportunity. So we want to be more intentional with that. Just this last week, we had a meeting, for example, with the athletic director for UHV, having conversations about some tournaments that we could potentially submit bids for. Ironically, that same week, the new athletic director for Victoria College also reached out wanting to meet, also to discuss different bids that we might be able to submit as a community. And so clearly having a dedicated person to help gather all this information, help contribute, our portion of what might be needed for bids is going to be crucial. We do have somebody starting later this month, and we expect to go public with that announcement in the next week and a half or so. Jason wasn't supposed to say her name.
Oh, sorry. Sports tourism manager.
Yeah. I'm just giving you a hard time. So more information to come on that soon.
But that is right. Mr. Garza, mentioned the tournaments that we have. We just got a software program that shows us all of the bids that are open nationally right now, and it's going to help us kind of fine tune which bids are going to be acceptable for us. And what I mean by acceptable is what can we host? Right? We know we can't host pickleball because they need 50 courts. We don't have that, but we do have basketball courts. We do have an aquatic center with the ISD. How can we partner? How can we bring those things to Victoria and just roll out the red carpet for them?
Thank you, Mr. Alfaro. Is there any staff here that you'd like to recognize?
Yeah, we do. We have Kimberly back there in the back. She was very crucial in helping us with a lot of the programs that we had, one of them being the youth hunting program that I didn't mention. But yeah, so Kimberly has been a rock star for us. She's our assistant director for Parks and Recreation.
I'm sorry, I tried to hide back there.
Did you tell us about the youth hunting program, or have I forgotten, or how was that well received?
It was well received, yes, ma'am. We had 6 kids that came out to Riverside Park. We were able to harvest 18 deer, and a lot of that meat was able to go to, Trinity Oaks.
Trinity Oaks.
Trinity Oaks. And then what we're able to do, not only host those 6 kids here in Riverside, but we had another event with the Texas Youth Hunting Association. We're able to send additional kids to an off-site hunting program. And so in total, I think it was around 10 to 12 kids that we're able to service.
Great, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. All right. Next, I'm going to ask Dana to come up and provide you an annual report for our library.
Good evening, Council. This evening, I have Jessica Berger with me, my Assistant Director, who's going to be helping me present. And I also wanted to recognize the President of the Friends of the Library Board, Diana Sneed, is out in the audience. Say hi, Diana. We really appreciate the support of Friends, and I'm so happy that she came to cheer us on tonight, so thank you, Diana. So 2021. It was another unusual year for us. You're going to hear us talk a little bit during this presentation about hybrid programs during the report. And hybrid programs are when we present an event in the library and invite the public to come into the space with us. And at the same time, we're filming that and then presenting it on Facebook Live, usually for us, Facebook Live, so that people can watch it virtually from home. So as a comparison, 2021 really was a hybrid year for library services. Looking back on it, I was really surprised to realize that in January and February of 2021, I still had some staff working from home, staggering some of those days off and on. By May, we were confident enough that we could start scheduling our summer reading events in person. Before that, we hadn't had the confidence to do that, to realize that the public would actually attend in-person events. Then when school went back into session, and then as we approached the end of the year, we started seeing a lot of staff shortage because of illness, because of Omicron and all of that was going on. So it was just an up and down hybrid year. Looking at our statistical trends overall for the year, our users were facing the same problems and the same issues with lots of ups and downs throughout the year. So my staff, I'm very proud of them as they stepped up to the challenge, and they continued to provide excellent service to the community through what I'm going to call our hybrid year. So the mission of Victoria Public Library is to bring people, information, and ideas together to enrich lives and build community. And we do that, and we've done that in 2021 through the several goals that I'm going to outline here. Major goals for us in 2021 were to encourage a love of reading and literacy, provide materials and services to satisfy curiosity, develop programs for our community so that they could express creativity, and utilize technology and support collaboration. Under the goal of encouraging a love of reading, we focused on the following projects. A major one for us in 2021 was the implementation of customer relations software called Patron Point. Patron Point has allowed us to improve our library card renewal process because it sends an email notification to each card holder once a library card is expired and reminds them you need to update your card. These updates are then shared with our Apollo system, which is our integrated library system software, and it keeps that database of card holders and our book database more up to date. We can also drive our customer traffic now to specific library resources, such as our downloadable ebook database, our library events, by allowing us to create customized emails and newsletters for specific portions of our card holders, and it's based upon various demographics. So we can send customized emails or like a specific type of newsletter to a particular age group, maybe a particular zip code. So we have those capabilities now. We also introduced a monthly digital newsletter, and we send it out to card holders that elect this resource. And it's something that also, if you go to our website, you'll see a pop-up all of a sudden that says sign up for our newsletter. So even if you're not a card holder with us, but you're just interested in knowing more about the library, you can sign up for our newsletter. We sent our first newsletter in May of 2021 to 363 patrons or customers, and by January of this year, we sent that newsletter to 15,166 patrons. So it just took off like crazy. So big win there in getting our message out. Also during 2021, we had a full year of providing library materials to Meals on Wheels or homebound clients who elect to receive this service. We send out between 150 to 200 items monthly to about 25 clients, and these items are delivered by community volunteers. So the library's role in this service is to make sure each client has a library card, and then we pull the items and bag them, and then they're picked up and delivered. So the library staff is not delivering those items. Now I wanted to have Jessica talk a little bit about our Friends of the Library.
Good evening. Our Friends of the Library are known for their 3 book sales that happen in January, May, and September. Their last book sale before the pandemic was in January 2020. So they were not able to have 3 book sales. So early last year, they had the question, how do we get back into business? I can tell you now that they're back and they're more supportive than ever. They've held 3 successful book sales since May of last year. They are connecting with the community more by volunteering through events and talking about and advocating their Friends of the Library group and the support that they give us and how supportive they are to us. They've not only begun volunteering beyond the book sales, but they've reinstated their Facebook page. So now they have a social media presence where they talk about the book sales, advocate for us, and talk about what's going on in the library, and shine a light on some of the things that the library is doing throughout the community. They've increased their volunteer base by adding so much more value and adding to their base. They've found different ways to connect to the community by presenting at Victoria College their continuing education and how to be a Friends of the Library volunteer for the library. They've implemented gift cards to the book sales, so you can now purchase a gift card to use at the Friends of the Library book sale. In the fall, they celebrated their 50th anniversary. So we had a ribbon cutting at the library, and they're ready to support us for 50 more years. We had a spirit week for Friends of the Library where staff was able to just do some fun activities to remind our public that we love our Friends of the Library.
So under the goal of providing materials and services to our community, we worked on the following projects in 2021. One of the things is that COVID showed us is that we needed to be more responsive in having an online library card sign up. Quickly, we tried to figure out something we could do that was kind of on our website, or maybe it was like we'd hand out a paper out the back door at curbside and let someone fill it out and get a library card. But we've streamlined that and made that process a lot nicer, a lot cleaner. So we have a process where you go to our website, you register for a new card, and within 48 hours, you will be issued a barcode and PIN through your email. You'll also start receiving emails, and you can start using that library, the library's digital resources immediately as soon as you get that barcode and set up your PIN number. You are required to come by the library to pick up your physical library card within 90 days, and that will allow you then to check out physical materials from the library. And this is for Victoria County residents only, but it does streamline that process a lot. It makes it a lot faster. We also added an additional ebook service last year called Hoopla, and it's something that we'd received quite a few requests from our community for because they'd seen it in other bigger cities or they'd had experience with Hoopla. It provides access to additional ebooks and magazine subscriptions, and it's very complementary to Overdrive, which is our other ebook service. Different titles and different, they have the magazines that Overdrive does not have magazines at all. An addition we made to our collection in 21 is what we call read-along books for children. Those are books that have a connected audio element attached to the physical book. So as you turn the pages of the book, you can play the audio that goes along with it. And this type of book is really helpful for children who have dyslexia or are just learning to read. So it's a new type of material. We're also eventually in the next couple months be getting those in various languages. So we'll have them in Spanish and other languages as well.
Programming. In 2020, we introduced a virtual program called VPL Jams, which featured local artists of all types of music. We invited these musicians to play inside the library and provide a 30-minute to an hour performance that was live streamed on Facebook. These performances were held outside of library operation hours, and most of the performances are usually on Friday evenings after the library is closed to the public. But we do open the doors back up for people to come in to attend the performances. In 2021, VPL Jams held 13 live stream performances. There were 11,345 live views online. We had 153 people come to the library to participate as an audience member. And later in the year, we've been able to establish a partnership with CVB and their music-friendly community initiative, which they have helped us assisted us by contributing a monetary fee or monetary. We were able to pay the artist. Like CVB, we partnered with Parks and Recreation. You saw a picture that Jason shared, but I wanted to talk a little bit more about it, which is the Story Walk Project. Our librarian chose some family-friendly stories that were able to be used throughout the trail. And these pages were enlarged onto signs, and readers were encouraged to follow the trail to find the next page of the story. We started the Story Walk collaboration in September 2021. The first story was called Hoot the Owl, and it received a lot of traction, and it was well received in the community. It was shared a lot on Facebook, and a lot of people were going out to do the story. In mid-December, we had the next story, which was called Lawrence in the Fall. And since then, they've changed out the story again. The Tail Trail begins at the nature trail, and it's encouraged for all to enjoy. In October, we partnered with Parks and Rec again for National Pumpkin Day. Parks and Recreation were able to secure a donation of over 100 pumpkins from HEB. They, along with some library staff, were able to pass out 145 pumpkins. They provided the pumpkins, we had the paint and the lawn, and the community came out and we painted pumpkins. In 2021, we increased our teen program offerings compared to previous years, so we're adding more teen events. Teen Manga Night and Teen Nerf Wars. The Nerf Wars do happen when the library is closed, are some of the fan favorites for our teens, but we've added a book club, a DIY craft, do-it-yourself crafts, and self-help programs to add to the list of teen programming. Last year, the library was awarded a CARES grant for over $24,000 from the South Texas State Library and Archives Commission. With the grant, we were able to develop a new virtual meeting space, as you can see in the picture. Renovations were completed in early August, and since August through December, we've seen a huge increase in usage of this room. The room has a state-of-the-art smart TV and a meeting owl, which is an all-in-one 360 camera, mic, and speaker for video conferencing. The purpose of developing this room, this new space, was to provide access to the community in the form of a virtual meeting room to hold business meetings, interviews, job help training, educational training, and classroom space for educational purposes. And since then, the room has been used for all the above. We've also developed a partnership with Goodwill Industries of South Texas, which they use our computer lab at the library to provide digital skills trainings for people in the community. They hold weekly classes at the library on Tuesdays from 10 to 4 to assist Victoria residents. They provide training and support for job readiness and job placement skills, and the Goodwill staffer is called a career navigator. And since May of last year, they've helped 217 residents with job skills training readiness.
So I wanted to jump back in here and talk a little bit about some of our metrics. So giving you a high-level picture of overall usage, focusing first on buildings and materials. So the bar chart on the left side of this slide shows what happened over the last 3 years. So in 2019, that was kind of our last kind of normal, I don't know if you'd call that, but more normal year. We had over 365,000 items check out and 196,000 people come into our building. In 2020, checkouts decreased to just over 280,000 items and foot traffic to approximately 113,000. And then in 2021, we had a very similar pattern to 2020. In the pie chart on the top right, I broke down the numbers of checkouts for 2021 by type and age of cardholder. So overall, when you look at our usage of our collection, 85% of our checkouts are physical materials and 15% are ebooks. Adult cardholders check out more items in both categories than children. And often we see that parents will check out for their children. So that's another reason why you have that high adult usage of physical items. And then the pie chart in the bottom right shows the breakdown of our meeting room use by meeting room name. And this is the use only by outside groups. This does not include the staff use or our programming use. So our new meeting room was used 103 times last year, and our Bronte room 108. So our new meeting room almost beat out our Bronte room. Bronte room's the large room as you come right into the building. Computer lab was used 35 times by outside groups, and storytime room 11 times. But those meeting rooms get used almost daily. We have storytime programming, we have book groups, we have teen events. So we have a calendar that we use to keep track of it all. It's hard to get a reservation. It's hard to jump in there as a staff person sometimes and just use the room just to practice something or have some quiet time to work on a project. Our rooms are used a lot. So much so that this year we are getting on our website a scheduler so that you can go online and schedule your meeting room use. So if you have a club, a group, small study group, you want to schedule a meeting room, you go in, you fill out the form online, and then you can schedule a time, and once you're approved, you've got your appointments. All right, Jessica's going to talk about program metrics.
Okay, the top image is a comparison of 3 years of our total attendance of all of our programming. As you can see, what I'd like to say, in 2019, all of our programs were in-person programs. In 2020, January through February, they were in person, and March through December, it was entirely virtual. In 2021, January through part of May were virtual, and May through December were hybrid virtual, as Dana explained what that was about, attending or watching it on Facebook, and in person. We introduced in-person programs in May, and the community responded with an overwhelmingly positive response. Their feedback was, we want in-person programs again. Our first story time since the pandemic was hosted at Ethel E. Tracy Park with another partnership with Parks and Rec as they provided their pop-up park at the event. We had 98 people attend our story time that day. And that was in May. And in June, we had our kickoff to our summer event where we invited people to come to the library to say, yay, summer started, it's kickoff. There were 823 people that came to our kickoff. So our community was saying, it's time for in-person programs again. In the chart on the bottom side, you can see our attendance by age. And we are very popular with youth programming. But the 3-year comparison also shows that the community is interested in adult programs, as you can see by the orange bar and how it's been climbing since 2019. We would like to grow our adult attendance, and we're also going to grow our teen numbers. As I said before, we've added more teen programming to our schedule. I would like to highlight that, again, go back up to the top, that we have seen continued growth in our programming attendance despite the unknown and uncertainty of this past year. Our teams have been able to do in-person programs, then hybrid virtual, and back to in-person programs again without missing a beat. We have been able to be flexible, yet consistent with providing quality programs to the community. Thank you.
Looking forward. First of all, we're going to start with programs. This year, we have some exciting new programs and partnerships coming up. We're going to introduce 1,000 books before kindergarten. And later this month, we are going to introduce a sensory story time to the community. This story time is for families with children who are on the autism spectrum and who have multisensory needs. This program provides a welcoming environment for children to enjoy a story and other fun activities. This new story time is just another way to connect with the community, and it's another reading time that we will add to our already established schedule of programs with baby time, toddler time, pre-K power, and our daycare story times. The next one is our digital literacy training. We will continue our partnership with the Goodwill Industry of South Texas, as they have confirmed that they will continue their job skills and readiness training this year. We will launch a new database called the Niche Academy. This is an online learning platform made for libraries that includes ready tutorials for many common library services, and it has tutorials for library staff training, and as well as a publicly facing platform that has trained tutorials of all kinds. We've talked about our Meals on Wheels partnership, but we hope to expand our senior services in the community. To date, we've established a new partnership with the Courtyard Rehabilitation and Healthcare Center, and are making new contacts to add to the list to develop programs specifically for their residents. We have identified the library drop-off program with the materials, crafts to go for seniors, and some digital literacy training opportunities, to name a few. And then moving on to collaborations through the community, we do have a partnership with Victoria College. We're going to be part of their continuing education lifelong learning series. We are in the hobbies and leisure learning, and our program will be called Victoria Public Library, an overview, so that you can hear what we have to offer. We will continue our partnerships with One Sound, One Heart Music Therapy that hosts a monthly program in the library for families and young children. And we will be offering more self-help programs with a partnership of Midcoast Family Services, as we recently held a self-care journaling program led by a representative with Midcoast Family Services. This program was attended by 45 people, adults and teens. And a week after the program, we had a comment card that I'd like to share with y'all. It says, the self-help presentation in the Bronte Room was seriously life-changing, and we hope you do more like this. We have so much planned for 2022. We're looking forward to another successful year. Thank you. So we were part of the Main Street master plan that was completed this last fall. And I wanted to briefly remind you of the recommendations in that plan that pertain to the library. They include an entrance to the library on the Main Street side of the building, adding a public art garden space with shade and seating, adding a retail kiosk to the library grounds, such as a coffee shop, adding library signage at Goodwin Avenue, and updating exterior lighting. I bring those forward because we are also part of the citywide library facility assessment and a strategic plan project. As part of that plan, we have contracted with Maureen Arndt of 720 Design to incorporate those Main Street Master Plan recommendations into our site plan and create a more robust and strategic plan process for the library that includes some of those long-term goals. Myself, the city management, and the library staff met with Maureen last week. It was over a 2-day period, and she did a lot of interviews of my staff, really looked at our space, asked my staff, how do you use this space? Does this space work for you? Does it work for how you use it with the public as well? And I think she got a lot of good feedback from the staff on that. I've included a timeline just to give you a brief idea of her process or the library's process in this facility assessment. In April, I know that our formal facility assessment is going to occur where they're going to be checking roof and foundation and windows, et cetera, parts of the building. In May, Maureen is coming back. She's going to lead 4 community focus groups. We're going to hold those in different locations throughout the city. We're going to invite some people specifically, but they're also going to be open meetings where we're going to really encourage and advertise these to get community feedback. She's also wanting to meet with city leaders and the city council, so I know she will be asking to meet with all of you and get feedback and pull that into this process as we develop our long-term plan. In June, she's coming back to meet with my library advisory board and friends of the library board to have conversations with them as well. She's going to come out with some facilities recommendations sometime this summer. I think get some feedback when we see those and take a look at those. And then that project is to be completed by the end of September. Also, I will be working with her to develop a survey, which will be a community-wide survey as well. And I think it'll be more my project to get that survey out to the community and how we're going to do that and talking with city management as to how they want that to occur. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us. So highlights for 2021 for the library include that $24,000 grant we received from the Texas State Library for our new virtual meeting room, developing a partnership with Goodwill Industries where we provided computer classes on job training skills to 217 individuals, implementation of our Patron Point customer relations software, which develop better communications with our users, and we're going to use that to help grow our cardholder base and usage of our services. Expansion of our senior services, and more planned in 2022, and just being a place of community connection. We had 109,000 people walk through our doors, 276,000 items checked out, 257 outside groups using our meeting rooms, and 31,000 people attending our programs. So we have kept busy in 21. So I'm open to any questions you may have at this point. Anything I can clarify?
I want to thank you for all the children's programs that y'all do. I know there's a lot of people that are always looking something for their kids to go do, some type of activity, and your price point's just right for a lot of people. And really appreciate it. I have one other question. And doing some reading on libraries, it seems that quite a few of them recognize the fact that tax dollars that are local are paying for their libraries. And as such, they have non-resident cards. So that if you are not within the jurisdiction of the library, you get charged a fee if you want to use the library. How does our library handle that?
We have a non-resident card option, but it's for out of state. So like our snowbirds, we know we have that population that come in from other states to live here for 6 months, 3 to 6 months, and we do have that option for them to purchase a card. Now that's the only one where we have a charge. We had been following in the past some recommendations from the Texas State Library and not charging residents of Texas. It's certainly something that we can go back and look at again, but that's the level of charge for cards we have is for those that live out of state or do not own property They cannot prove that they own property in the state of Texas.
Okay, it's something I'd like to consider looking into.
Yeah, we also.
And to be clear, I assume we would mean outside the county, not the city, correct?
Right.
Yes.
We also have a level of restriction that we apply. So if you are a card holder in the county, you live in the county, you get access to everything. If you don't live in the county, you don't have access to like all of our databases, our ebooks. You know, there's restrictions there. There's levels of service, I guess you'd say, versus charges is what we've set up.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. My only comment added to that is we do plan on also including county leadership as part of those meetings with Marine, and obviously be mindful of the fact that it is a city-county library, and so we'll be scheduling those out as well.
Great. Drum roll, Mr. Garsh is up.
Yeah, can you help me? Pass these out, please. Probably. Cool, thank you. All right, so I hope you brought your magnifying glasses.
Magnifying glass.
Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna go through this in 5 minutes. Just kidding.
Thank you, sir.
I emailed you this information, and I just want you to just have it, so you can go through it at your leisure and have more information around the submittals that came in for the ARPA funds, as well as some more detailed information on some of the key projects. But just really quickly, as a refresher, we know that last year we found out that we would get $14.5 million from ARPA funds, and that we would get the first half last year and the other half this year. And so all that has gone fairly smooth. We went through a process with you talking about the allowable uses. We went through a process trying to develop categories that you would feel comfortable with, and we landed on these: broadband, utility infrastructure, loss of revenue, organizational needs, tourism and travel, economic development, and community grants. And so since then, we have gone through a process of making recommendations on how to spend the money within these categories. And I'm gonna go through where we left it off last time. And where we left it off last time was we had only committed 4.35 million, and thus still had a little over 10 million that had not gone committed. And I'll go through each of the categories, summarizing what's been committed and what's not, and what our recommendation is moving forward. This one's pretty straightforward. Loss of revenue, 3 million. This was one of the very first ones that we seeked authorization for. And we, of course, saw the benefits of this when we adopted the fiscal year 22 budget, and that it was a historic year in the amount of money that we transferred from general fund over to our CIP in order to continue doing the various projects that are in our CIP program. Organizational needs, this originally was at $1 million. And you may recall we split that up among several categories: employee wellness, which we use to help incentivize our employees to get the vaccine. We also recently adopted a new asset program that we spent some money out of ARPA for. We had facility enhancements, which was only $200,000, and that's what we also utilize for our facility master plan that's currently underway. This is the one section of this that has seen an increase by $1 million, and so we are recommending that we allocate $1 million from ARPA funds to go towards our public safety headquarter project. We talked about this briefly on Friday at our workshop, in that we are working on coming up with a little over $3 million to be spent this year and next year to account for the purchase of a property, and then kick us off with a design that we would hopefully enter into in the fall. And then the $150,000 that we've utilized for to kickstart our grant administration division. Economic development, we had already allotted $100,000 to go for Innovation Collective. We are now recommending that we allocate $1 million to go towards the expansion of De Leon Plaza, and this is the rendering that came from our adopted downtown master plan, just to serve as a refresher. We utilized this economic development category and extended it to focus on downtown revitalization, again, a priority of ours, and so we aligned that accordingly. On tourism and travel, We are recommending that we allocate $1 million to go towards our downtown visitor center shift. There's, of course, a lot of unknowns yet with that, but we want to set aside the funds so that we can continue realistically looking at what our options are to relocate our visitor center and just generally have a better visitor center presence closer to the square, in a building that we could all feel a little more proud of, that's representative of our community. We're also recommending $500,000 to go towards improvements at our Texas Zoo. We all know that the Texas Zoo is a great asset of ours that does bring tourists to our community. And like assets are meant to be, we should invest in them when given an opportunity. And obviously having the ARPA funds presents an opportunity to do that. We're also working with the Zoological Society to update our agreement with them to ensure that we're all in the best position to ensure that the funds are spent accordingly, and that we just have proper oversight of the management of our Texas Zoo. And I will say that we are beginning to be more involved. Christy Euchre, who is, of course, head of Keep Victoria Beautiful, she's now on the Texas Zoo board. And so we're very excited about her involvement with the Texas Zoo. On the utility side, we've been talking about 2 projects, the inflow and infiltration study, or I&I for short, as well as the SCADA implementation. We had already allocated $150,000 for a pre-engineering report for the SCADA, and we went through a separate RFQ process for the I&I study. Both of those were close to $4 million. And so we are, in essence, taking a phased approach where we are recommending a phase 1 of the I&I study at $1.5 million, or not to exceed $1.5 million, which will focus on the southeast quadrant of our community, which is the quadrant that, of course, is closest to our regional wastewater treatment plant, which is the plant that is the most threatened, if you will, by having high I&I rates or infiltration. And a phase 1 for the SCADA implementation at $1 million. On broadband, Cobb Finley completed that report for us, which Derek has spent a lot of time working on and discussing with you and other stakeholders. We had already allocated $100,000 to go towards the studies, which we utilized to initially partner with Connected Nation that helped us with some gathering of data and some analysis. They ended up being a good resource for us during the RFQ process that landed Cobb Finley as the firm to do that study for us. So we're recommending that we allocate $3 million from ARPA to go towards middle mile development, which will also help ensure that all aspects of our community have equitable access to broadband. You may recall that the purpose of the Broadband Commission was to make broadband more accessible, affordable, and what's the other one? Accessible, affordable, reliable. There you go. That's the big one, right? That's probably the one we get most complaints about. Out of 1,000 responses, 800 were get us something else. Okay.
Can you go back to that chart? I'm not understanding the legend. I get the boundary and I get the underserved, but where is the middle mile? How is that marked? Is that just the darker lines?
Correct.
The darker lines that are not blue?
Correct.
Okay.
So my understanding of this is that for a company to come in there, there's not enough density.
Correct.
In that area to make it profitable for them to come in there. And so we need to try and entice them and help them so that all areas of our city have the same opportunity with fiber internet.
Right. Well, and to also be clear, we are not suggesting that we run or operate this middle mile operation. We're simply suggesting that this would be an opportunity for us to partner with a company that is already potentially in the process of building out a middle mile network. Some communities are getting into the business of developing a middle mile and running it and literally creating a new utility. But we're definitely not suggesting that. We're simply suggesting that this is an opportunity to partner with a company to make the numbers work for everybody so that we can have that equitable access throughout our entire corporate city limits.
And I apologize that I didn't completely understand the presentation. Is it the middle mile within the underserved, which is what this chart seems to be pointing me
Correct.
to. So it's not the middle mile of the entire community.
Correct. The cost for an entire middle mile, and Derek, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that was close to 9 million.
Okay, thank you, that clarifies.
Yeah. So, okay. Last, that leaves $1 million to go towards community grants. Last year, we activated an online submittal process that yielded over 70 responses. And this is just a brief recap of what those responses were. We specifically put it out after we had developed these categories. And so when people responded and submitted proposals, they were required to, is this broadband? Is this economic development? Is this community grants? And so what I want to focus on is, I guess, two parts: the economic development piece as well as community grants. And recall that economic development also includes downtown. Because most of the others we've been able to address through our other processes, right? So for example, there were some submittals, related to, we need some more competition to Suddenlink, and things like that, things that we're already working on. Utilities, obviously we're already investing money in utilities, again, things that we're already working on. So really quickly, this is just an example of some of the entities that would have benefited from the proposals that were submitted under economic development. You have Victoria College that submitted a project to renovate the annex, if I can call it that, behind the Welder Center, which I think a lot of people refer to it as the former taxi cab stand. There you go. Anyways, so they're submitted a proposal for that, and you actually have a copy of that specific proposal, which is just north of $250,000. And I'll get to that a little later. But in any case, there was proposals in all of these entities. And you have, of course, the details, in front of you that you can explore at your leisure. On the community grant side, we kind of focus these more on some of the more of the human services, if you will. And so you have a copy of the Billy T. Catan outreach project, but we also received some requests from some other nonprofits listed there. I will note, and to be very clear, that all of these submittals came last year. And so I know that there is conversation, in our community currently about a project being spearheaded by the Humility Project. That project was not submitted last year. And so for purposes of the evaluation and consideration of projects that we're recommending today, the current iteration of a Humility Project was not in consideration. To be fair to the process of everybody involved, we stuck to those proposals that were submitted last year. One of the things that became very evident early in the process was this desire from City Council to focus our dollars on transformational projects. And so we developed some criteria as we analyzed these different proposals to think, okay, does this project create new jobs? Does it add new services in our community that currently don't exist? Does it contribute to neighborhood revitalization, as an example? Does it help build resiliency? Or maybe it's an existing service that simply is looking to provide a greater service. And so we looked at all of those things, and ultimately there were a couple of projects that, quite frankly, very quickly rose to the top. And so our recommendation for community grants are two projects, which you have both of those proposals in more specificity in front of you, is to contribute $500,000 to go towards the Billy T. Catan Center, which, as you know, will be building a facility that currently does not exist. So this brings a service that currently doesn't exist. It creates jobs. It does so many things that fit our transformational. This is an image of a rendering that RMA put together of what this facility would look like, which would be located off of future I-69 and 185 sort of intersection. And so we are supportive of that project because it literally checked every box that we developed for criteria for transformational efforts. The second project is a project Life Enrichment Center proposal that Salvation Army submitted. Salvation Army is, of course, one of the players that's involved with addressing homelessness and helping folks get back up on their feet. And so one of the needs, if you will, that has been identified by all the different nonprofits involved is that there really isn't a centralized place where folks who are looking to get on their feet can access resources. Currently, if they need help with, birth certificate or ID, they might have to go to this nonprofit, in one part of town, and then for something else, different part of town. And so the vision for this Life Enrichment Center is to be a space where it serves as a day center for the homeless. So it would have showers and it would have some resources. Obviously, the Salvation Army has already a network of things that they would provide and extend to this center. But more importantly, it would create a space where some of the other nonprofits could set up shop, during certain hours of every day, as an example, so that these individuals looking to get up on their feet only go to one place and have all of their needs met there. And so this is, as part of the Salvation Army proposal, they are requesting funds to help with the startup cost to put the center, but then also a year's worth of operation to give them an opportunity to fundraise for long-term sustainability of this. You have a lot of churches that are involved with this project. And quite frankly, they've already started the fundraising. Mike and I had a good meeting with Captain Kenny Jones a couple of weeks ago, and they're already ahead of the curve. Captain Kenny Jones, he's great. We're blessed to have him leading our Salvation Army. And in both of these projects, we also have a direct involvement to ensure their success. I, for example, have been invited to be part of the committee to help with the capital campaign of Billy Ticatan, because we want to make sure that that's a project that's successful. Mike Atian, Chief Arredondo, they're board members of the Salvation Army. And so through all these roles, we're able to play a role in ensuring that, our investments are well spent, and we ensure that our dollars can be sustained. Because ultimately, we all want to be cognizant of investing in projects that we know can be sustainable. And so we're very involved with those to ensure that that happens. We had also been working with another project that we also felt would be transformational, which was a relocation of Christ Kitchen. It is the city's position that the current location of Christ Kitchen hinders the redevelopment of that neighborhood, hinders the redevelopment of Queen City Park. We had been working with Christ Kitchen to relocate them. They had suggested that they would be interested in relocating to be close to the Life Enrichment Center that I just discussed, because of the overlap that exists in the clients and the people that are served by the Salvation Army, by the new Life Enrichment Center, and by Christ Kitchen. Unfortunately, the board of directors for Christ Kitchen has decided that they are not interested in moving, and many of you saw the official notification that they sent us on that. And so that has created an opportunity to free up, if you will, if we want to call it that, $250,000 to go towards other entities. And so, yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, before you move on, and you actually did, I need to ask about the Salvation Army a little bit more.
Of course.
In the spreadsheet that we need our magnifying glass for a year ago, and because of the process that you mentioned, I see a request for $150,000. The request is now $250,000, and I just need to square that with the fairness to the other organizations that might have asked for things, or why is the request now higher?
If you look at the more detailed proposal from Salvation Army that you have in front of you, that'll detail the cost, which will total $243,000, so closer to the $250,000. What we ended up doing when we identified these projects early on and which ones would rise to the top, we started engaging these nonprofits from the beginning. So, for example, we've had several meetings with, Billy Ticatan leadership, with Salvation Army leadership, with Christ Kitchen leadership, reaffirming, okay, you submitted this proposal. What did you base this off of? Is it accurate? What's needed? Let's fine tune the proposal to get it to a point where everybody feels comfortable that it would be successful, right? Because quite frankly, the original process that we put out online didn't really require a lot of information, right? I mean, it was very generic. So naturally, it would have necessitated some follow-up from us to meet with these entities and just confirm, what they're trying to achieve, how much money is needed. And so once we sat down with the Salvation Army to truly understand what they were trying to achieve, then that's when we got the more robust submittal at our request that does total closer to the $250,000.
Okay, thank you very much. Sorry to disturb your train of
No.
thought.
It's good. Good questions. Excuse me. And so some options. These are just, I'm going to go through these just very quickly. And again, this is a combination of, economic development proposals and community grants. So as I alluded to earlier, we did receive a request from Victoria College, which was also amended. And it was amended after we also had a sit-down follow-up meeting with them to truly understand what they were trying to achieve. and which is technically a little bit greater than $250,000, but that's how much is available now, right? And so in any case, that's for the renovation of the annex behind the Weller Center. There was a proposal submitted by the food bank, which was a greater amount than 250,000, but we put 250 because that's what's available, right? To go towards the cost of their new location. We actually double checked with them today just to confirm, what their need is. And like, as you would expect, they're seeing an increase in construction costs. And so they're having to, fundraise some additional dollars to help offset that. There's of course still the option of contributing the funds to Christ Kitchen, but just in a different way. We confirmed with them that, if they are granted some dollars, they could potentially use them to enhance the exterior of the facility, some landscape improvements, things of that nature. There was a proposal that came in related to Southside revitalization on home restoration grant programs. I could tell you that just in the last few days, that word is beginning to get out on our infill housing program, right? There's been a lot of feedback surrounding, okay, well, that's great that the city is, turning around these vacant lots to get them developed, but what if anything can be done to prevent, structures from even getting to that point? And so this program that was submitted for the Southside Coalition area was to develop a home restoration grant program to help improve some of those structures before they get to the point where we have to demolish them and condemn them. Anyway, there were the humility project submittal, as I mentioned, this was submitted last year, so nothing to do with the proposal that has been talked about recently. At the time, that proposal was legitimate, $450,000, and you'll see that in the form, and it was really generic as it related to just going towards homelessness efforts. And there was also contrary to that, or opposite of that, there was very specific proposals submitted by Meals on Wheels, which was $85,000 to complete kitchen renovation. They want to make sure that they're, from a resiliency standpoint, are prepared to expand their level of service. Like, so when we get a hurricane, for example, right, all of a sudden, the expectation that exists on our nonprofits, such as Meals on Wheels, Christ Kitchen, and others, all of a sudden, skyrockets. So they want to make sure that they have the facility to do that. Also submitted funds for hot box delivery vehicles, 2 of those. Those you'll see change a little bit. I also touched base with Meals on Wheels, and just in that time frame, the cost of the vehicles have went up a little bit. So we've adjusted for that. And Meals on Wheels technically had also submitted another project for $500,000, which was in essence just to have an alternative site. But that project scope was much larger for what money is available. And so this is just a list of some options. I actually just realized that I intended to also include an option for the workforce. We also received a submittal from our workforce development board in requesting that we spend $250,000 and help support workforce development projects or programs that they have. So that's just in a nutshell. Don't necessarily need a decision today on the remaining 250, but just food for thought. Obviously, if you do have comments, questions, or directions, we're happy to take it.
I have 2 questions.
Yes, sir.
Remind me when we have to use all the money by.
It has to be dedicated by the end of 2024, which is different than spent by the end of 2024. However, our approach to this is that we do want it spent before the end of 2024, because in the off chance that any of these investments that we choose to invest in don't pan out, well, we have time to reallocate them to something else.
My second question, couldn't the Housing Finance Corporation do revitalization grants?
That's a great question, but theoretically, probably, with certain requirements and parameters.
And how much money do they have right now? How much money you got, Ricky?
Well, it's just a few $100,000 right now, right? Over the span of 17 years, it's going to equate, to over $5 million.
Right.
But yeah, assuming that that's an item that council wants to take up, sure, we can develop strategies and other ways to fund it.
I'm having a little bit of a difficult time with that one, so.
Yeah, that's fair.
Just from why is it the taxpayers need to fix up those houses? I'd ask across the whole entire city.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, one thing I didn't understand is like when Hurricane Harvey happened, they built all these new homes and fixed up homes in Bloomington. And Refugio got loads of money to fix up homes. Now, I did find out that Refugio got private grants for a lot of that money. But nothing seemed to happen in the city of Victoria, and it just, I don't know, I wondered why, that's all.
Well, we can definitely chase that item down, offline.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's difficult. They're all very worthy, but I like the Victoria College one. When I come back to transformation, I guess in their proposal, I couldn't help but be excited. It made a comment about restrooms that would be available from the outside of the building, which is one of the needs downtown.
Right, yeah.
So,
And when we toured the space, it would be in the back, right? So they'd be kind of hard to find, like these public restrooms that they're referring to wouldn't be visible from any of the main roads, but they would be there nonetheless for any large events that might be taking.
and I guess it says overflow for events taking place at the Welder Center.
Right. Yeah.
But they could be rented out to local organizations during downtown events.
Let me ask y'all a question, just to parse this a little bit. Is everybody okay with the recommendations that were presented up to this final $250,000?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Ricky? You seem hesitant.
Overall, yes.
Overall,
I
yes.
always have.
Yeah,
and we could, discuss the specifics,
Well, I have a concern about the Salvation Army. I don't want it to, this center that they're proposing, I don't want it to turn out looking like the one in downtown Austin. You know, the one I'm talking on 7th Street.
And what he's referring to is that you just have, this congregation of, homeless individuals that, if the day center is scheduled to open at 9, they're there all night, waiting for it to open at 9, and it just creates this cluster of issues.
Yeah, so I'd like to know from them how that's gonna be addressed, so we don't end up creating that type of situation.
Sure. Well, we do have a capital improvement project going in that might add sidewalks. You can't camp out on sidewalks.
And I guess my answer to your question is, I think I'm okay in concept, but I'd like some more information, because I know several of those, and you may have touched on it and missed it, but several of those, the recommended amounts were more than what was asked for. And I'd like to get a little bit more information about why those deltas on the zoo, the Salvation, there were, and I think even Victoria College was one of those too. So I'd like to know kind of what the difference is between what they asked for X, the recommendation is Y. How come the difference in there?
Sure, no, that's fair. And like I said, we've had, conversations with all of the entities that we're recommending for funding, from the zoo to the nonprofits. We've had plenty of sit-down conversations with them to kind of flesh all this out. One of the things that I was going to mention under next steps is that, all of these things would be documented through an agreement. There would be deliverables to ensure that, what we expect to happen takes place. If it doesn't, this is what happens. And so those are things that we're working on with the city attorney's office. The good news is that we don't have to start from scratch, because if you think about it, we already have, contracts that dictate, relationships, whether it's the usage of hot funds, with third-party entities or the CDBG funds, right? So we already have a framework of how we interact and deal with nonprofits and third-party entities when we grant them money. And so now it's just a matter of framing those in the context of ARPA funds, and what the expectations are. And so what I was hoping to receive tonight was, at minimum, an okay to proceed with all of this, so that we can start hammering out, spending the resources of time and energy in developing some of the more specific deal points to then bring back, an agreement with you as an example. Now, obviously, there are elements of here that don't necessitate an agreement with a third party, right? Like the SCADA or the I&I study, right? Those are things that we would simply bring forward to you like we would any other contract with a professional services company.
So what I'm hearing from everybody is the questions are around community grant changes. But aside from that, everything's all right.
Yeah, I think so.
To
Right.
give y'all good direction with everything.
Got it.
Along that. And some questions to be answered around community grants, why they increased and what the change of scope was.
Yep.
And then we got to figure out, as a group, we're still left with the $250,000 and all these worthy projects. What fits our criteria the best?
And I think as part of that, we need to be cognizant, at least in my mind, of some of these entities are taxpayer supported already. Some of them are not. This may be a one-time chance for those that are not already funded by taxpayer dollars. I think that needs to, at least in my mind, should be part of our thinking on this.
So.
Right?
And then, when you're thinking, like, some of these I'd rather, I know that y'all are working on them, getting them going, SCADA, I&I, all that. I just want to make sure that if we get lucky and something comes in under budget and we can reprogram, we can.
Absolutely. Yeah, we have
I know
that
that y'all would do
flexibility
that,
for sure. Yeah.
And same on the overage, we're gonna have to make some tough decisions.
Right, and that's exactly why, we left an uncommitted amount of
Right.
$158,000 just to account for
That's barely over
anything that
1%.
might- Right, yeah. But we do anticipate some of these potentially being less. We got to have conversations about broadband. There's a lot of movement. Derek will actually provide an update in executive session for you on that. So there are things that, we'll have to be flexible, right, and nimble. But at minimum, having this pathway of, okay, let's head down this, gives us more of a green light to continue.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to go a step further. I mean, on community grants, are there a couple of them that we're in agreement on? Like, for instance, the Billy Catan Center, I'm sure they're very actively fundraising, and if they had a commitment from the city that could make a difference to them, is that something that, because
Oh, absolutely. Well, that's why
that's why I'm asking if that's something, because I got the impression we approved everything, but didn't say on the community grants, or did I miss that?
No, I understood as only, like, you're approving or supporting, I should say, Billy T. Catan and Salvation Army. Obviously, there are some questions, and we'll have conversations eventually to make them, more official, but I'm walking away with the understanding that you are generally supportive of those two projects. There's just some questions that need to be answered, unless I'm misunderstanding and you're suggesting just completely from scratch, reassessing how to spend the $1 million in community grants. So I guess some clarity would be
I
good.
don't think that's.
No, I don't think.
I agree with the Billy.
I think it's just
Catan
some
and the Salvation
clarification
Army.
questions and understanding of what the
Of how
increases
we got
are,
to that
so.
number.
And I know that's.
And Texas Zoo, Salvation Army.
Right, yeah.
And just understanding what those changes are. And I know it came from due diligence, working with them, walking sites, looking at, did you take this into consideration and this and that? To make sure we didn't just give a fraction of what they need, but actually that we get to accomplish our goals.
To make them actually more transformational versus
Yes.
a Band-Aid for the problem.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, that's where it came from.
And Victoria College is a perfect example. Their original submittal was $130-something thousand. And after we met with them, we made some recommendations that would make the project more transformational. And that's what then increased the cost. Because we were thinking of it as, council's not gonna support something that's not transformational, right? Okay. Well, that's all I've got then.
All right. With that, we will recess into executive session, or we'll recess for, give us 10 minutes, and then reconvene in executive session.